How ancient humans crossed frozen oceans. The ice stretched beyond the horizon. No land visible in any direction. Just white, flat, endless frozen ocean. The wind cut through everything. The temperature was unimaginably cold, and a group of humans walked forward into that emptiness without hesitation. They had been walking for days. They would walk for many more, and at the end of it, they would find land no human had ever seen. This actually happened, not once, many times. Across thousands of years of human history, ancient humans crossed frozen oceans deliberately, not by accident, not by being carried on drifting ice, by walking, by planning, by knowing exactly what they were doing. The ice was not their enemy, it was their road. During certain periods of Earth's history, ocean temperatures dropped significantly. Water froze across enormous stretches of sea. What had been open water became solid ground that ancient humans could walk across, the same way they walked across everything else. With knowledge, with preparation, with survival skill. The most famous of these crossings happened between Asia and America. A land bridge formed where the Bering Sea now sits, not a narrow bridge, a wide, flat, expansive frozen plain. Thousands of kilometers of walkable terrain, covered in tundra grass and roaming animals. Ancient humans didn't see it as a crossing. They saw it as more land to follow. They followed the animals first. Mammoths moved across this frozen plain. Giant bison followed the same routes. Horses, now extinct in the Americas, walked across. Ancient hunters followed them, not because they planned to cross continents, because the animals kept moving forward, and following animals was how ancient humans survived. Reading ice was a critical survival skill. Not all frozen ocean was safe to walk on. Some ice looked solid but wasn't. Some sections were dangerously thin beneath the surface. Walking onto the wrong section meant death. Immediate, cold, irreversible death. Ancient humans who crossed frozen oceans knew ice, the way a hunter knows animal behavior. Completely, precisely, without margin for error. The color of ice told specific stories. White ice was older and more solid. Blue ice was dense and extremely reliable. Gray ice was young and dangerously thin. Black ice beneath the surface meant water very close. Ancient travelers read these colors constantly while walking. One wrong step in the wrong direction, and everything ended there. The sound of ice also mattered enormously. Solid ice under pressure made a specific sound, a creaking, deep, groaning sound beneath the feet. That sound meant the ice was shifting. It meant stop, reassess, find a different route. A cracking sound meant move away immediately. Ancient ice travelers developed hearing for these sounds, the way hunters developed hearing for predators. As a survival necessity, not as a choice. Clothing was the difference between survival and death. The cold on frozen ocean was extreme, far beyond anything experienced on land travel. Wind moved across open ice without any obstacle. It stripped body heat with terrifying efficiency. Ancient humans who crossed frozen oceans wore layered clothing, 3 layers minimum in extreme conditions. Inner hide against skin for moisture management. Middle layer for insulation and retain warmth. Outer layer of the thickest available hide, sealed at every opening against the wind. The seams of that outer layer mattered specifically. A poorly sewn seam let cold air inside. Cold air inside clothing killed on open ice. Ancient tailors who made clothing for ice travel were among the most valued people in any group. Their needles were made from fine bone. Their stitches were tight and completely windproof. The quality of their work decided who survived. Food was carried specifically for frozen ocean crossings. Hunting was impossible on open flat ice. No animals lived on the ice itself. The hunters became travelers for the crossing duration. They carried as much fat as possible, dried mammoth fat, rendered animal fat stores. Fat was the only fuel that worked. In temperatures that cold, the body burned extraordinary calories. Fat provided twice the energy of anything else. Running out of food on open ice was a death sentence with no appeal. Water was another critical and difficult problem. Surrounded by frozen ocean, water seemed available everywhere. But eating snow or ice directly was dangerous. It lowered core body temperature dangerously fast. Melting ice required fire. Fire on open ice required specific materials. Ancient ice travelers carried their fire materials carefully protected, wrapped in waterproof hide against moisture and wet. Making fire on open frozen ocean was difficult, but it was done. Every single night of the crossing, navigation on flat white ice was extremely difficult. Every direction looked identical to every other. No trees, no rivers, no landmarks of any kind, just white in every direction without end. Ancient humans used stars for navigation on ice. The same star patterns that guided land travel worked just as reliably above frozen ocean. The stars didn't change because the terrain did. They were the one reliable constant available in an environment that offered almost nothing else. The sun's position was tracked obsessively during daylight. Its angle told experienced travelers their approximate direction. Its height above the horizon indicated time of day. Time of day determined how much daylight remained, and how much daylight remained determined whether to continue or to stop and build shelter immediately before dark. Crossing frozen ocean after dark without fire was fatal. The cold at night on open ice was absolute. Shelter on open ice required specific knowledge and technique. There were no natural shelters on frozen ocean, no caves, no rock overhangs, no fallen trees, just ice, and the materials the group carried. Ancient ice travelers built into the ice itself. They cut blocks of packed ice with tools, stacked them into low, curved windbreak structures, covered with animal hide stretched tight across the top. Inside that structure, body heat accumulated quickly. A small fire burned carefully in the center. The group pressed together for shared warmth through the night. Groups never crossed frozen oceans as individuals. A lone human on open ice died. The mathematics were absolute and without exception. Too much to carry, too much to monitor, too little warmth generated by a single body. Crossings were group undertakings requiring specific role distribution. Experienced ice readers walked ahead and tested ground. Younger, strong members carried the heaviest supply loads. Elders who knew the route guided from within the group. Children stayed in the center of the moving formation, protected on all sides by adult bodies. The knowledge of when to cross mattered most. Crossing too early meant thin ice and death. Crossing too late meant melting ice and death. There was a specific window each frozen season, when the ice was thick enough to support weight. But the season hadn't yet begun its warming. Ancient humans who knew this territory knew that window, not from calculation, from generations of observation passed through stories. An elder who had crossed before knew, and that knowledge was worth more than everything else. The crossings took many days to complete, sometimes weeks depending on distance and conditions. Every morning the group assessed the ice ahead. Every evening they built shelter against the cold. Every night someone stayed awake to tend the fire. Every dawn they moved forward again without hesitation, because stopping in the middle of a crossing was not an option that the ice allowed. The ice was either crossed or it killed you. There was no comfortable middle ground available. When land finally appeared on the distant horizon, it didn't look welcoming. It looked like more ice, more white, more cold, more emptiness. But it was land, solid land beneath the ice. Land that would eventually thaw into something livable. Land that no human had ever stood on before. The group walked toward it without celebration. They were too tired and too cold for celebration. They walked toward it because it was there, and because they had crossed everything to reach it.